Part 1. Our Intro to Deconstructive Theory. Deconstructive theory, the favorite of brooding nihilists, overly technical know-it-alls, and Yale professors. Deconstructive criticism was initially popularized by French philosopher Jacques Derrida in his 1966 lecture, Structure, Sign, and Play in the Discourse on the Human Sciences. Throughout the 1970s, there was a shift in academia from structuralism to newly dubbed post-structuralism or deconstructive criticism. Deconstructive theory, in all its essence, is to be skeptical of structuralism and the assumptions it makes to ascribe meaning to text. It focuses on what is not said rather than what is said and aims to expose contradictions, gaps, and incoherences in text. Through very close and highly critical reading, it picks apart a text until it inevitably contradicts itself, disintegrating any absolute meaning. Put simply, deconstruction is the process of proving a text has no meaning because of failure of language to convey said meaning. Unfortunately for our group, this means that we've been doomed to fail in conveying these ideas to you from the start, which has not been good for morale. One of the key tenets of deconstructionism is that absolute meaning is unachievable because our language depends on context to convey meaning. For example, if you told your friend to stand under a tree, they might think your request is a little strange, but they would know what you meant because of their past experience with the definition of a tree. However, if an alien that lacks this contextual understanding came to Earth and wanted to know what a tree is, yes, for the purposes of this example, the alien can speak English, how would you explain it? The answer is you would not be able to provide an absolute definition of a tree that the alien would be able to understand using only the tools of language. In order to convey meaning, that is, to make the alien understand what a tree is in the same way that you understand it, you would have to reference things, signifiers, that the tree is not to create oppositions. The tree is not an animal. The tree is not the color red. The tree is not a bush. As you do this, however, each new signifier is equally indefinable as tree, leaving you in an infinite state of deference and negation. This idea is the basis of one of Derrida's key concepts of deconstructive theory, difference, that objective meaning always disintegrates upon close critical examination. Does this mean we are doomed to a life of confusion and frustration as we futilely try to communicate our ideas? Obviously, no. As I mentioned before, contextual understanding is enough for us to properly convey meaning and intent. Rather, deconstructionism is a reminder of the unstable and arbitrary nature of language and hopefully makes us more conscientious of the importance of context and consequence of language.
Our main evidence from Beloved, and what you don't need to know. White people believed that whatever the manners, under every dark skin was a jungle. Swift, unnavigable waters, swinging, screaming baboons, sleeping snakes, red gums ready for their sweet white blood. In a way, they were right. But it wasn't the jungle blacks brought with them to this place. It was the jungle white folks planted in them. And it grew. It spread. Until it invaded the whites who had made it. Made them bloody, silly, worse than even they wanted to be. So scared were they of the jungle they had made. The screaming baboon lived under their own white skin. The red gums were their own. Toni Morrison, Beloved, page 234. So here we have some swift, unnavigable waters, sleeping snakes, and white folks casually planting a jungle into blacks. Not exactly an ideal situation. Now, after looking at Morrison's dialogue and what she has to say within it, realize that we don't need about 95% of it.
Okay, so not really fake news, but it's not far off. It's time for deconstruction, aka structuralism's evil twin. Alright, so let's start off at the place where we all know we should start. What is a baboon? Okay, let me rephrase. So deconstructive theory usually starts with basic central ideas that we then further pull apart and use to disprove the passage's main idea. So we find the central idea, then we find the evidence for this central idea, and using that same evidence and the text, we will peel apart the text and use that to disprove the central idea of the passage. Now let's go back to baboon. So baboon is a word that is usually used as an insult to describe unintelligent, savage-like people. In this case, I ended up writing intelligent instead of unintelligent. Therefore, I am a baboon. Okay, not really. But baboon in this passage was used to describe white people. But were white people really baboons? Were they really not intelligent? Did they really not know what they were doing when they captured all of these people to be their slaves? They knew what they were doing, and it worked. They had a whole civilization, and they still have a civilization that was created out of their own image for culture. So, the second step of the deconstruction theory is to keep looking, no matter how laborious, for gaps and incoherencies within the text, and just keep reading and thinking about the meaning of the words within the text. Essentially, you're reading the same lines over and over again very, very closely. But as long as you keep peeling apart what the structure is talking to you about, the answer shall come. So, as we went on, we eventually found the gap between Morrison's use of the jungle metaphor and slavery. The jungle is something unreserved, natural, and lawless, which is completely different from the social institutionalization of slavery, which has its own cultures and laws that are humanized and unnatural, such as indentured servitude and cotton fields and contracted slaves who were bound to their owners.
The core structuralist view of this passage that we've deconstructed from Morrison's Beloved is the idea that the societal relationship between savagery and civilization within the realm of slavery is nothing more than a man-made dichotomy, i.e., we found the vampire. But on a more serious note, within the long process that we've applied to Beloved, we have concluded that the savagery of white people is a contextual fallacy that erases the intelligence needed to create such an organized civilization. In short, we've taken the meaning of the passage at face value and turned it on its head, peeling apart the seams to reveal the inner weaknesses. In this case, the misconception that the laws of nature are an excuse for slavery, as the jungle the white people brought was a simple fact of life brought by the hands of mindless baboons, when in reality it proves to be a highly organized and intelligent decision not made at the hands of fools. Now that you've made it through this video, and are hopefully still awake, congratulations! You've just survived Deconstructive Theory 101.